Okay, so as I mentioned, there are lots of modals, but in this lesson, we are going to focus on could and should. Okay, so let's watch the lesson.
Unit 7, Lesson B, Modals. Could and should. Watch and listen. Could. Use could to give suggestions.
You could pay with cash.
He could use his credit card.
You could wear a jacket.
They could take the bus.
He could buy it later.
Should. Use should to give advice. Should give stronger advice than could.
You should take a taxi.
They should ask for directions.
You should wear a coat.
They should take the bus.
He should buy it now.
Check your understanding. Complete the sentence with could or should and the verb in parentheses.
You could wear a jacket. You should wear a coat.
They should take the bus. They could take the bus.
He could buy it later. He should buy it now.
Let's review. Use could to give suggestions.
You could get a smaller car and save money.
He could keep his money in a savings account.
Use should to give advice. Should give stronger advice than could.
What should I do?
You should open a savings account.
Okay, exercise 2, practice. Complete the sentences. Use could or should. Now, as you watched in the video, we use could for suggestions and should for advice. So should is a little stronger, and could is often used with options. Like you might say, you could do this or you could do that. So let's take a look at number 1. My rent is going up again. What should I do? And also, when we ask for advice or suggestions, we generally use should. We don't really say, what could I do? It's okay, but it's more common to just say, what should I do? Even if the answer uses could or should, we still ask, what should I do? So letter B, here's my advice. You're a good tenant. I think you should talk to your landlord. Let's take a look at number 2. I have to fix my credit. What should I do? Okay, so the answer is you should talk to a debt counselor. He can help you. And then number 3, can you suggest a nice restaurant? It's my wife's birthday. So in this case, this person is asking for suggestions, and in general, there are so many options for restaurants. So it's good to use could. You could try Chow's, or how about Anita's? So in the answer, you can already see there are 2 options, Chow's and Anita's. So often when we say, how about, that's also a suggestion. But sometimes you want to highly recommend a restaurant. Then in those cases, you can say should. You should really try Chow's. That means that I strongly recommend that you try that place. Okay, now look at the useful language box on the right. So it says, for suggestions, you can say, why don't you plus verb, okay? Like, why don't you try Chow's? We could also use how about plus noun. How about Anita's? Or you can also use how about plus verb plus ing. So it's a gerund. So noun or gerund. You could say, how about going to Anita's? Okay, so I want you to go ahead and complete numbers 4 through 8, and then I'm going to play the answers.
Page 86, Exercise 2A. 1.
My rent is going up again. What should I do?
Here's my advice. You're a good tenant. I think you should talk to your landlord.
2.
I have to fix my credit. What should I do?
You should talk to a debt counselor. He can help you.
3.
Can you suggest a nice restaurant? It's my wife's birthday.
You could try Chow's. Or how about Anita's?
4.
It's my niece's 16th birthday next week. What could I get her?
Why don't you get tickets to a concert? Or you could buy her a CD.
5.
That vocational school is very expensive. I can't afford it. Can you give me any advice?
Well, you're a good student. I think you should apply for a scholarship.
6.
I need a new car. Where do you suggest I look for one?
How about looking in the newspaper? Or you could look online.
7.
I just got another parking ticket. It's getting harder and harder to park in this neighborhood.
I think you should sell that car. You don't really need it.
8. I'm going to be in New York City in July. Any ideas for things to do?
Well, you could see a show on Broadway. Or you could walk in Central Park. Or you could go to an art museum. There are so many things to do.
Okay, let's move on to page 87, exercise B. Okay, so let's look at the conversation. My car broke down. You could take the bus, or you could ask someone for a ride. So as you can see, there are a couple of options suggested. So we can use could. So let's practice on our own, or you can practice with someone in your family and make suggestions or give advice using could or should. Okay, so we're going to start with number 2 because number 1 was already done in the example. So number 2, my rent is going up $150. Okay, so we might say, you should talk to your landlord. There aren't too many options for that. Okay, number 3, it's getting cold in here. You could put on a sweater, or you could raise the temperature. Okay, number 4, I can't afford a new washing machine. So maybe we can say, you could go to the laundromat until you save up enough money. Or you could use mine. You could use a friend's. You could use a family member's. Number 5, these shoes look terrible. And they do look pretty bad, so we might say, you should throw them away. Or you should get new ones. Number 6, I don't have enough cash to pay for these groceries. You could pay with a credit card if you have one. Or you could put some things back and get them next time. Okay, number 7, I got a bad haircut. And depending on if the person is a man or a woman, we might say, you could shave it all off if you're a man. Or you could tie it into a ponytail if you're a woman. Or you could wear a hat. And then number 8, my neighbors are really noisy. And so for this one, we could say, you should talk to them. And if you live in an apartment, maybe we could say, you should talk to your landlord. Okay, so now let's take a look at exercise 3, communicate. So similar to the activity we just did, we can see some problems that need advice or suggestions, but this time we are going to use third person. So instead of saying I and you, we're going to talk about others. So let's look at the first one. Helene spends too much money on food. Think about some suggestions or advice you could give her. Okay, so maybe we can say, she could try cooking at home more often, or she could use coupons and deals when she goes out. Okay, so take some time to think about some advice or suggestions you could give each of these people. And for this exercise as well, you can practice with a family member or you can practice on your own. Okay, so Gregory spends too much money on clothes. So we might say, he should try to save money for more urgent things. Or he could try shopping at discount stores. And then Teresa spends too much money on rent. So we could say, she should look for another apartment. Or she should talk to her landlord. Okay, and then Yusuf spends too much money on his cell phone plan. So we might say he could switch plans, or he could try meeting in person instead of talking on his cell phone. Okay, Melinda spends too much money on her car payments. So maybe we can say she should trade it in for a cheaper car. So there's another phrasal verb, trade in. So trade, as you know, means to switch one thing for another thing. So if you trade in your car, then you're replacing your car with another car. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at our workbook on page 80. Workbook page 80. Okay. So exercise 1, match the problems with the suggestions. Okay, match the problems with the suggestions. So let's look at number 1. I can't afford gas for my car. And I also want you to practice adding the question, asking for advice after you read the sentence. So for example, I can't afford gas for my car. What should I do? So just practice that because it's a really common question. What should I do? What should he do? What should she do? Okay, what should we do? Okay, so the answer is B. You could take the bus. So I'll give you some time to complete the rest of the exercise and then we will look at it together. Okay, number 2. My credit card bills are too high. What should I do? And the answer is letter E. You could talk to a debt counselor. Number 3. I need to find a job. What should I do? And the answer is letter D. You could look at an online job site. Number 4. I can't afford a new computer. What should I do? Letter F. You could use your credit card. Number 5. My rent is too expensive. What should I do? Letter C. You could find a cheaper apartment. And number 6, my cell phone bill is too high. What should I do? Letter A, you could use email instead. Okay, so let's look at exercise 2. Circle the correct form of the verb. And for this one, I'm going to just read it and pause, and you can circle the correct answer. Keep in mind what we talked about from the useful language box. Okay, so number 1, you should buy a new car. So if you remember, I mentioned that after a modal, you always use the original form of the verb, and should is a modal. So you should buy a new car. Number 2, how about taking out a loan? Okay, so in this case, we use the gerund form taking because we used how about, and we always use a noun or a gerund after how about. Okay, and then number 3, you could use a credit card. So could is a modal, so we use the original form, use. You could use a credit card. Number 4, why don't you talk to a debt counselor? Why don't you talk to a debt counselor? And then number 5, you should apply for a scholarship. You should apply for a scholarship. And number 6, how about looking in the newspaper? How about looking in the newspaper? Okay, so let's continue to exercise 3. Complete the sentences. Use could or should. So number 1, I don't have enough money at the end of each month. Do you have any advice? You should try to save a little each month. Okay, so go ahead and complete numbers 2 through 6, and then we will look at it together. Okay, number 2. Where do you suggest I buy a new camera? You could find one online, or you could go to the mall. So again, you can see those 2 options. Okay, so could. And then number 3. I don't know how to apply for college. Can you give me any advice? You should talk to a counselor. Number 4. My tooth hurts. What should I do? You should go to the dentist. And that's pretty obvious advice. Okay, number 5. Can you suggest a good place to go on vacation? You could go to Hawaii or maybe Las Vegas. And so in this case too, you can see those options, Hawaii and Las Vegas. Okay, number 6. I want to get a good grade on my test. What should I do? You should study hard this weekend. Of course, there's no other way to do well on a test. Okay, and then let's look at page 81, exercise 4. Complete the sentences. Use an expression in the box. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. I don't have enough cash to pay for the tickets. What should I do? How about using your credit card? So because of how about, you know you need to use a noun or a gerund. So using your credit card. So go ahead and finish the exercise and we will look at it together. Okay, number 2, we need a car, but we can't afford to buy a new one. So we could say, you could buy a used one. Okay, number 3, this sweater looks old. You should buy a new one. Okay, number 4, the price of gas is going up to $5 a gallon. What am I going to do? You could start walking more often. You could start walking more often. Number 5, I'm spending too much money on cell phone calls. Do you have any suggestions? How about looking for a cheaper plan? And number 6, I got a great bonus at work. What should I do with the money? Why don't you open a savings account? Okay, and exercise 5, complete the sentences. Use should and the verbs in the box. Okay, so number 1, we don't have plans this weekend. What should we do? I don't know, maybe we could go to the movies. So if you noticed, the response starts with, I don't know. So obviously this person doesn't have a strong suggestion. So could is used. Maybe we could go to the movies. Okay, so go ahead and complete the rest of the exercise and we will look at it together. Okay, number 2, I didn't finish the homework. What should I tell my teacher? You should tell your teacher the truth. You didn't have enough time. Number 3, I'm going shopping tomorrow. What should I buy? I think you should get a new pair of pants. Number 4, I want to make a special dinner tonight. What should I make? Well, I like fish. Number 5, I don't have any nice clothes for the party. What should I wear? You should borrow my black jacket. Okay, so as I mentioned before, when we ask for advice, we generally use should instead of could. So as you can see, each question uses should. Okay, so this is the end of our lesson for today. And for homework, you can send me your suggestions and advice for exercise 3 on page 87. So these were the sentences in third person about Helene, Gregory, Teresa, Yusuf, and Melinda. So that's 5 sentences. So I want you to send me your advice or suggestions for these people. Okay, I will see you next time.